Oh no, I definitely started a meme account because I had gotten banned from a subreddit that I had taken over kind of de facto. It was like an unmoderated, semi-political subreddit, and I just started shit posting a bunch of lefty memes that I found there, and they started getting some upvotes. But then a bunch of right wingers who were also just in the unmoderated subreddit got really pissed off about it, and actually contacted the moderators and then got them to come out of hibernation just to ban me,
Jesus.
and then take over the subreddit and get all the lefties out, and then hand over moderation to someone who was like a right wing libertarian, so read fascist. And then it's been a fascist subreddit ever since. But at least I knew that like the memes I were collecting, like I had a good enough sense of humor that people were liking them. I'm like, well, let me just start an Instagram meme page, and then I did that, and that was like 5 years ago, I think, almost.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hello,
there.
hello.
Oh, hello there.
Yes, we are back with another fabulous episode.
Yeah, episode 18. We're back. We're back,
God.
baby. Yeah, this is a good one. I was excited for this one.
Yeah, a little fanboy over here.
Yeah, we're 2 for 2. Last week and this week have just been so fun. We've done back-to-back interviews with just really cool guests. We did Sally
We
Hates
really
Capitalism
have, yeah.
last week, and then this week we were honored. We had the pleasure, the honor of hosting or of welcoming Mike from
Drum
the
roll.
Turn Leftist
Oh,
podcast.
well, that was anticlimactic.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to step on your drum roll. My bad, dude. So yeah, we had Mike from Turn Leftist on, and it was just awesome. If you're unfamiliar, definitely go follow the Turn Leftist. There's a bunch of Instagram pages. They're all over social media. The podcast, as well as go join their Discord
Yeah.
server. They're all over the
They're
place.
legendary.
Super good, like leftist kind of comments or leftist content. Really, really prolific and kind of
Yeah.
meme posting too. If you follow me, most of my reposts are just Turn Leftist shit posts.
If you like political memes, it's definitely the number one political meme
Also,
page.
just like a really bright guy, and he takes he's so chill, and he just takes a really cool approach to having these conversations of like just letting the conversation happen, and this like, but also just like taking it at face value, right? Like not coming in with like, I don't know how to describe this, not coming in with these like ideological pretensions, but just like communism is the only option. It's the only like moral position you could take for like the betterment of society. And like, just if you take that as your baseline of like where you stand, then you have conversations from that. That really removes a lot of arguments from other people. And it really like kind of takes the wind out of people's sails of like, people that would be disingenuous or reactionaries when you're coming in to have these conversations about communism, because it's like you're coming in it from like not a good place for like the betterment of future kind, which is like what government is supposed to be, right? Government is supposed to like help people.
Yeah, no, I mean the whole idea behind what we want is like an altruistic society where everybody is on good footing, or at least we give the opportunity for them to be on good footing, and the rest is up to them. But we want to at least have like that bottom line, like everybody has food, everybody has shelter, everybody has healthcare, everybody has a good way to transport themselves from one place to another. Now, anything past that is up to you. You know, you're laying a foundation. This is the bottom line that we want society to live by.
100%.
Yeah.
But it was just a really cool conversation to have, and
Fantastic.
We're excited to kind of what the future has in store, if we want to do any future, or if we definitely want to, if we can have the opportunity to do any kind of future collaborations with the Turn Leftist and Mike in particular, we're all for it. That was just super fun.
Oh yeah, this is fantastic.
Right.
And I didn't think we'd have such he's such a very good person to have a conversation with. I don't know how to
Very
word
approachable.
that. He's very approachable. He's a conversationalist. He can take one subject and slowly start sliding into another, and it just seems like a
really good
smooth process. And so it would be great to have another conversation with him again and have him on the podcast.
Yeah.
And we'll look forward to. I'm rambling here. Am I drunk or something?
Yeah, I was rambling too. It's okay.
Yeah.
Well, then, in that case, without further ado, here is our interview with Mike from Turn Leftist. Hope you enjoy.
Let's go.
We want to welcome Mike from Turn Leftist. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. Like we had mentioned just to Sally last week, we had reached out to you kind of over, I think I messaged you over Discord because I'm a member of the Turn Leftist Discord server. And I just kind of was like, hey, would you want to do this? We're kind of this new podcast. We're looking to just have some chats with people. Would you want to come on? And both you and Sally, to my amazement, both immediately said, yeah, sure, that'd be fine. So that goes to show just how cool the leftist internet space is, and also just how cool you two are. So welcome, Mike. Thanks so much for being here.
He won't tell you, but he's been fanboying.
I'm a fanboy. Yeah, I am not ashamed to admit, like, I'm a big turn leftist, like old school, like turn leftist fan from like back in the day, and that's why I'm super stoked. So like I remember that was actually kind of my baby leftism, as I was like, I remember your series you did on like Reagan and Thatcher in like 2021 or something. That was super cool. You guys did some like really like long form kind of, I think you did like Marx and Engels and Stalin, these like series is where you kind of went deep into those, and that was right during like late 2019 or late 2010 20s, early 2020s, whatever. And I was kind of really getting into like really learning, and that was really like, for a lot of people it was a deprogram that kind of radicalized them. For me it was turn left. So thanks for that, Mike.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. That's like literally the whole goal. Like, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And like the idea that anybody would fanboy over anything that we're doing is just like so mind blowing to me. But the idea that we could also be the pros of the round table for somebody else, because that's who it was for me. Like, we're trying to get through a Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, and Mao series right now. And we're just like slow going through it because everyone is just so busy. Like all of our co-hosts have their own lives that they're trying to get to and everything. And it's just really tough, but we will get through it eventually. I just would rather take it slow than put out subpar material, because I can't even go back and listen to this stuff. Like, to hear you talk about our Reagan and Thatcher episodes, I almost don't even want to listen to them again, because I can only imagine what kind of like sock damn shit opinions I would have had at that point.
I don't remember it being too bad. I mean, I think you guys are what kind of made me like quote unquote become a tanky. Like it was and like your guys' opinions. I know Jaron was always kind of more like an anarchist or a libertarian socialist on that. But he had some pretty radical views too. So I think it was, I don't think it was, I mean, I can't speak for you back then, because it's been years since I've also listened. So maybe, and I didn't know anything back then anyway. So I don't know. I think you maybe.
Yeah, it's just, just the nature of how you just cringe at anything that you put out after a certain amount of time, or at least I do. And fair warning to you guys for after you start doing this for a couple of years. But again, I just really appreciate that. But and for anyone listening, if you haven't checked out Pros of the Roundtable or Rev Left, please go check those out, because that is exactly what did it to me. Like I said it in my Discord to a couple people. There's nothing that will radicalize you faster than like hitting the pendulum on the way to and from work, listening to far left podcasts, and like getting radicalized that way. Like it works like a charm. It's like a chamber.
Yeah, it is. It was, and yeah, I don't want to like totally like nut hug too much. It wasn't just you guys. It was also Rev Left. It was also a handful of other guys. Dixieland and the Proletariat back then. I think they've recently changed their name. But yeah, those guys were great too. Yeah, and it was the same thing. I was working at Lowe's at the time. I was going to college, working at Lowe's in the garden center. So I was like 5 a.m. like lugging like pallets of like bricks and shit, and I was just like in my headphones, were just rocking out to like turn leftist. And
he's looking at the garden hose, just like, man, it's time for revolution.
It was very formidable years for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
hell yeah.
So anyway, thanks for coming on. This like I said, I'll try not to fanboy too much. Kanan is he's gonna have a better time of this, because he's not as well versed in you guys. Like not to throw him under the bus, but he was more of a deprogram guy. All right, so we just have some generic questions, like that we kind of the same questions we asked Sally, just to kind of ease in. How did you originally come to leftism? Like way back in the day, baby leftist Mike. What was your kind of pathway? I know there's a few pipelines people take generally, but what was it like for you?
I guess it was just having a genuine interest in something further left of Obama and not knowing what that was, but just growing up in the same environment we all grew up in, where you're just kind of what do you call it, like de facto scared of communism. Like just as a default position, you just think that that's scary and just as bad as fascism. And I came to it through like a variety of sources. Like I saw some YouTube videos, like some of the same kind of like debunk videos that people see. I argued with people on Reddit, and I noticed that I really lost hard to people who were left of me when I was like either a libertarian or just like a radical liberal, and I would like just have like shitty American takes, and then someone would prove me wrong about some kind of misconception I had, and then rather than just like be a brat about it and just like double down and like turn right and just like I don't know, get emotional, I just actually changed my mind about some things and found out that other countries are not shitholes, and like how many opinions I had about other places and other systems of government that actually do work, objectively and provably better in a lot of instances than our own, and how many of my opinions were just based in kind of a latent xenophobia or racism that I wasn't confronting at all, and then seeing how much that still comes up in other people when you try to have these conversations. If you can then find the sources to back that kind of stuff up, and you can, I just it blows my mind that more people don't get there, I guess, is the thing. So it's hard to really trace like what is the one origin of it, but I really think I guess it would be like podcasts, like we were saying, like listening to a bunch of just radical left podcasts. I almost feel like the medium is not so much important as just the genuine desire, and then you're going to find the medium that fits you best, whether it's a podcast or YouTube video or just actual print media, God forbid.
Yeah. No, I think you raise a good point there, because like, yeah, it's frustrating sometimes, right? Like, because I think when you're on the other side of this wall, or the other side of this, whatever you want to call the other side of, when you're kind of like realized like in leftism, and kind of like you see it, and you're kind of like more of a fully fledged Marxist, it can be really frustrating to see how like obvious everything, like how shitty it is, and like the obvious reason for that is like, oh, it's just capitalism, and it's like, don't you see that? It's very painfully obvious, and it can be really frustrating to deal with like normies that like just aren't there yet, to use the pejorative normies. I don't know, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but like, people that are like either like progressive liberals that are kind of like on board with like social changes, but like aren't, that are still clinging on to this like false hope that capitalism can still be the answer. And it's just, I find that the most frustrating part. And I've kind of gone on record before as saying like, I'd rather like have conversations with like MAGA people about like what's wrong with America than like liberals, because at least like you have the ability to maybe change their mind at some point, but like liberals just seem to be so dug into like, I don't know, maybe that's a little
I feel
off
like
topic.
with people with MAGA, you just kind of have to repoint of direction of like their anger into like education.
Yeah,
versus liberals are like, this is our mindset and that's it.
Because MAGA people almost get it, right? Like, yes, things are not going well for America. Like, there are a lot of problems. These problems are systemic,
and it's because of the immigrants.
And like, their last point goes off the rails. But yeah, so I definitely sympathize with that frustration of like, just how can you not see this? So were you?
I wish I had your experience. Like, I think I've even thought that at various points too, that it might be easier to convert Republicans because they're at least anti-government for the time being, but I just don't know. I feel equally dismal, and I just feel at this point I am so jaded about Americans as a whole, just as an entire culture, as like Americanism almost as an ideology, and I feel like they are so gross. I'm just so disgusted with Americans, and really it's the ongoing genocide and people's willingness to ignore it.
Yeah.
And then the fact that like liberals kind of take this position of, I don't want to watch those videos, I'm not going to pay attention to that stuff, I'm going to like immerse myself in Stanley Cup drama or whatever it is. Like they not only do that so that they can avoid the material reality of what they are very directly responsible for with their dollars, but that's kind of the moral position. That's kind of taken as the default good guy position to take, because it's like if you are just aware of the genocide and you are just outspoken of it, you're seen as like a weirdo, like almost like you're like a pariah. It's like it makes people uncomfortable, so then they think you're like a worse person for it, and then they think that you're virtue signaling simply because you're unable to do anything individually about it. Like you can go to all the marches, you can do actual activism, but if it doesn't do anything, then they think you are just virtue signaling, and therefore you're just causing division or personal strife, or you're causing them that personal discomfort, and they would choose to rather. Yeah. That's why they hate leftists so much. It's because it's looking into the mirror. We point the mirror at them, and they do not like that shit.
Yeah, they would much rather just bury their head in the sand and kind of pretend that a problem doesn't exist rather than like face it head on.
That reminds me of is like the 60s. They're like with MLK and Malcolm X and stuff like that. When you look at like the actual rating of like how many people were in favor of Martin Luther King Jr., it was like 23%. But today you're like, oh no, of course, he's a great man or whatever. Yeah. But back then it's just like he was pointing like, hey, he was more concerned with like the moderate, the moderate liberal versus like the conservative. He's like, that is the actual enemy because they can make the change.
Oh yeah, that was that.
But they choose not to.
Yeah. I mean, so like, that begs the question, right? Like in 60 years or however long, are we going to be looking back at the Israel-Palestine being like, obviously this was genocide, like from the get-go, everyone could see this. But at the time, like most liberals and all conservatives, would kind of be hesitant to say that now. I don't know what the actual polling numbers look like.
But is that what happens every time though, right? Like this is not the only like event where this happens. It's like every single time, like Iraq,
No,
Well,
fair. Yeah, fair enough.
Bush had a huge
Yeah.
acceptance rating. Like everybody
approval
loved
rating
him, and
after,
then
yeah.
over time, people were like, "Wait, this is kind of like this is fucking crazy, man. So many people are dead."
Yeah. Well, let me ask then.
You know
How,
what?
so, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say real quick. It'll sound weird, but the one thing I would ask people is like, take screenshots. Like literally take screenshots and keep them. Save them in like a specific folder for this because I'm already angry at the liberals who I know once Biden loses, like we are all assuming he's going to do, who are going to get re-radicalized and be leftists again and be like really angry about politics once again. I'm already angry at them for pretending that they were with us all along, for like acting like they were against the Palestinian genocide and like they were really outraged when they have chosen over and over again to just ignore it at best, if
Yeah.
not like so doubt about it, or endorse it. Like so yeah, just keep the receipts. I think this is like the one thing about living in this unprecedented age of internet ubiquity. Like you just cannot get away from it. Like just save the screenshots because we need to throw this in liberals' faces because I'm just already pissed at them for like
Yeah.
coming back to us and like not because that's the thing. They're also not going to like admit that the leftists have been right all along. They're still
Right.
going to be like shit libs and try to act like they dominate the entire left of America.
So you're like, can we coin the term fair weather radicals? Like,
Mm.
you know,
Mhm.
When it's appropriate,
yeah,
they'll go
when
a
it's
little
appropriate, they'll be with us. Yeah, we're like when the wind blows, like radicals. Yeah, no, I think that's well said because that's a good point too. Because I know like I have, I mean I don't want to out them too much, but not that they listen to the show. But I have like a liberal friend. Friend is a strong word, but like somebody I've been close with for a long time, and we have taken different paths, and they're pretty like blue no matter who. They're like a very well educated, very well spoken, very articulate person, which makes it even more frustrating that they like are still so like enamored with like electoral politics and like the Democratic Party and capitalism. But that's a separate conversation. The problem I have is I shitpost a lot on Instagram on my personal account, and like 90% of those memes come from the different like meme accounts that I follow. Well, 100% of them come from meme accounts, obviously they're memes, but I mean 90% of them come from like the turn leftist memes and like This American Left and Sally Hates Capitalism and a bunch of these. And every single one I post, this guy is in my DMs. He slides into my DMs literally every time I post with like the weirdest, shittiest takes. Like, have you seen the meme where it's like the hard to swallow pill, and it's like China hasn't dropped the bomb in like 60 years. America dropped like 600 yesterday or whatever, and it's like it's that like hard, that meme. This might have came from to the turn leftist. I posted that, and for an example, this is the one that happened like yesterday, the day before. He was in my DMs with just "great leap forward." ... And I'm like, what about it, dude? Like that, like it's just and it's I don't know. It's just that liberal mindset of like just opposing communism for the sake of opposing communism. Like, yeah, I don't know.
They should have thrown Japanese internment camp. ...
Yeah.
Native American genocide. ...
Yeah, and it's like I didn't respond. I stopped responding. I used to respond. I used to engage, and I used to try to like. I used to try to convert this person for less of better. I don't know. I should just block him, but
it's toxic as fuck, bro. Just get that guy out of your life.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like he's just constantly hounding me on like just with the random liberalist takes, and I'm like, what are you even talking about, dude? So like I see kind of where your point that oh shit, that kind of got off topic, but I see your point of like, yeah, I don't know if any of these people are convertible, and I don't know if my idea of like conservatives are even more kind of radicalizable.
Well, I just like to fuck with them, like with liberals they're just like fucking annoying, but with the conservatives they'll say some like fucking crazy shit, and I'm like, it makes me laugh. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I just feel like I'm talking to like people with an IQ of like 60.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't know. Well, that's also most of my family are like Southern conservatives because I'm from the South, and so most of my family have like they were like what I assume were normal people pre 2016, but dude, they just fucking went off the deep end like post like I think that's not an unusual story. I mean that's pretty
going around.
Yeah, it's like now most of my family are psychopaths that I haven't really I've kind of cut ties with a lot of them because it's just like, dude, like what are you talking about?
Same.
But I've talked to a couple of them since then, and it's like, yeah, they have all the right talking points about like kind of like distrust in government, understanding that things are wrong, and so that's where maybe that's shading my bias. Maybe you're right, Mike. Maybe just America is fucked and we're all doomed, but like, or at least all of them are doomed. Like none of them are like reachable, but I don't know. Maybe it's because my family, because I only talk to communists or conservatives. I don't really talk to liberals that much anymore. So I guess maybe that's like my own echo chamber is what's feeding into that.
Yeah, I definitely don't talk to people in real life about politics. Like if I talk about politics, it's online because it's safe to do that. I don't even know what kind of trouble I would get in if I just outed myself as a Marxist-Leninist in this area where I'm at right now. Like I'm in such a bumblefuck area with nothing around. and people default to conservative. Like when there's nothing around, when there is no education in America, you default to just plain old fascism. And so I was just only brushing up against what you said because of my own personal experience. Like I just don't have any luck converting anybody. Any conversations I've had with people in my personal life about politics have usually led to them wanting to disconnect from me or me to them because they either come up against the facts of the material reality of the US and its position in the world, and then where that puts them and their material responsibility in that position, like as a subject of the imperial core living in it, literally on the backs of everyone in the global south. It's like they would rather avoid that. And I can't stop pushing that in people's faces because I feel like if you are in that position, you at the very least should be outspoken about it and honest.
Yeah.
At the very least, because you're already materially supporting it. Like literally with every day, every 8 hours of your labor you put in every day, a portion of that tax that you're spending goes to propping up that imperialist empire materially, whether you like it or not. And you are hurting these people with your tax dollars and you're working to support it. So the very least you can do is have the uncomfortable realization and then conversation with everybody else in your fucking life about it until we actually agree that this is something we can and should overturn.
Yeah.
Or at least just stop supporting. Like that's the whole thing about it is like people act like a revolution has to be violent and bloody and like we could all just stop. You could just stop what you're doing, like stop going to work, stop doing things, and then the whole machine stops without our action, without our labor.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm so curious, like when you say somebody like your friend just says like great leap forward dot dot dot, I would be curious, like I want to get them in a man on the street situation where he doesn't have Google at hand and say, what do you think happened to Great Leap Forward? Like
I've
what is
invited
your
him on.
impression
I
of
want to
it?
like have a conversation with him because I'm
But the
like,
problem is like
yeah,
you can't because he doesn't have an actual understanding and it doesn't matter. His mentioning the Great Leap Forward is literally like an NPC script that he's using to avoid the actual confrontation with the facts.
yeah,
Or else he would have arrived at the position we're at. And that's why I'm just like why I say I'm like so disgusted with Americans. I don't think that we should be rooting for it to improve. And I feel like most of the American left is still stuck in this kind of latently racist position of wanting to improve the Fourth Reich when they should be wanting to tear it down entirely. Like we should not be cheering for universal health care or forgiving student loans.
or
Like if you're still
UBI
on
or any
that
of those
page,
like weird stopgap
I
things.
think you're just a step
Yeah.
behind. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
are you
no,
in
I
favor of
100% agree.
accelerationism then?
But not even accelerations because that's like a whole other thing.
I
It's
think-
like
Yeah, I think that gets like a weird bad rap of like that's its own ideology that's like
No.
pro like violent or something. Because we've like a few episodes ago we talked about this. Like, yeah, I am like according to that like accelerationist, but like it's like because let's just we're going to collapse. It's going to cause like deaths. Let's just do it now rather than like 5 years from now. Like this isn't working. The American empire will eventually collapse. Let's just try to rebuild it now.
if I could use a quick analogy, it's like as opposed to polishing the brass on the Titanic, which would be the Democratic Socialists and the Medicare for All UBI types, or speeding up into the iceberg, which is the right wing, just stopping the engine, just stopping the fucking engine. Like
Yeah.
that's all I want to do.
So like a general strike of everybody.
Well, I have a couple questions. I want to steer it back to kind of like your social media activism, if that's a thing. I don't know. We had a hard time kind of defining Sally hates capitalism.
Yeah, that
saying,
feels like an oxymoron, doesn't it?
right. Well, because I hate the word influencer, so I'm like, was it activism? Is it influence? I don't know. Whatever you want to call it, whatever it is. Turn Leftist has a very broad reach. It's a very radicalizing, in a good way, platform. I think I can honestly say that I have radicalized.
I mean, I hope so.
Yeah, I have 100% proof that I have radicalized at least a couple liberal friends by like daily posting, and like I'll add my own little comments on like something it'll be like an anti-Biden meme, and I'll add like some anecdotal like or not anecdote but like some kind of like bit about like how Biden is doing this or how like Trump wouldn't do this differently or whatever. And like over time I've started to see like liberal friends start reposting Turn Leftist and Sally Hates Capitalism to their stories, and I'm like, fuck yeah,
Gotcha.
I got them. So like I know it does have like it's slow and it may be like one or two at a time over the course of a year or whatever, but it is something. And so my question to you is like how did that come about? How did you, Mike, baby leftist guy, turn into a like influential meme shit poster, like tanky shit poster, for lack of a better phrase? Did that happen organically? Was that a choice that you made? You said I want to start a meme account, or did that just kind of happen over time slowly?
Oh no, I definitely started a meme account because I had gotten banned from a subreddit that I had taken over kind of de facto. It was like an unmoderated, semi-political subreddit, and I just started shitposting a bunch of lefty memes that I found there, and they started getting some upvotes. But then a bunch of right wingers who were also just in the unmoderated subreddit got really pissed off about it, eventually contacted the moderators, and then got them to come out of hibernation just to ban me, and then take over the subreddit and get all the lefties out, and then hand over moderation to someone who was like a right wing libertarian, so read fascist. And then it's been a fascist subreddit ever since. But at least I knew that like the memes I were collecting, like I had a good enough sense of humor that people were liking them. I'm like, well, let me just start an Instagram meme page, and then I did that, and that was like 5 years ago, I think, almost. So it was like September of 2018. So
Okay, yeah. Almost 6
and
years
then
ago, coming up on 6 years.
yeah, so that's actually how I met all the people that I recorded the podcast with as well. Like Sterling just reached out to me on Instagram, and that's how I was able to put all that together. But I've never cared about I have the same aversion to influencer as a term, or like even profits from social media at all. Like the fact that we have a Patreon kind of bugs me.
Right.
And I've always just made sure to funnel out the money as fast as we get it in to other people, either to edit our show or write notes for us. Like we have, I gotta say, like probably 6 full episodes of written notes that we have yet to record, because I just keep paying people to write stuff and then we just don't record because everybody's so busy. Like it's so silly, man. But yeah, I just don't like the idea of trying to do this stuff for clout. Like I don't want followers so that I can get my little dopamine hits, as much as I like my little dopamine hits from social media. I want followers because I want people to be communists. And when like
Right.
you tell me that like you've seen people successfully converted from my page or the podcast or from This American Left or Sally Hates Capitalism, like that warms my heart so much. Like each one of those people is that is cherished to me, to the point that like in our Discord that you're in, like you may have seen it, there's a channel that I made myself called Successful Brainwashings, and it's for everyone who DM'd me and said that like either the meme page or the podcast turned them even slightly more to the left and made them open their eyes up about Marxism and communism and like actually existing socialist countries and how they're not the dystopian hellholes that their government makes them believe it is, you know?
Yeah.
And so I love hearing that.
That's awesome, man. I'm happy to provide that warmth for your heart. And no, I mean it's 100% true. Like I said, it was turn leftist kind of pushed me further to the left. I then in turn pushed some people via turn leftist further to the left. And I mean that is kind of the one thing that does give me hope, kind of for at least a leftist, maybe not a leftist future, but just more people kind of coming on board with this. Is I've had conversations with like I don't want to spend too much information. That's okay. It's fine. Like I've had conversations with like doctors, or that are like new doctors that are like typically come from a fairly conservative family. They're a doctor, and there was a doctor like I was speaking with recently, and like they were asking me just a bunch of questions, like genuinely wanting to know like so why all this hate for communism? So like where does all that come from? And I was very like history teacher about it, and just very like upfront, and kind of like gave the short, long and short of the whole thing. And then they were like, okay, so like, and they like at the end of the conversation, they were like on board, and they were bought in, and they were like, yeah, so it sounds like there's been some missteps along the way, but I explained kind of like the idea of dialectical materialism and like learning from that and moving forward. So they were like bought in on that, and I was just like, that's cool to see, because this is somebody that like wouldn't normally, I think, be just like gone from like Biden liberal to like tanky in one conversation. And I think that it's a bittersweet thing, because yes, that's possible, but I think that's only possible because of like how truly rock bottom America is right now. Because it's very obvious that like they'll never own a home if they weren't a doctor. I guess that's a bad example, but like they'll never own a home. Millennials don't own homes, and younger. The job market is fucked. There's homeless people on the street everywhere. It's like there's very obvious signs of like this not working. And I think that's never been more apparent than now. So that does give me a little bit of hope, is that it's becoming easier to have these conversations with people. And if the person is willing to kind of like move past the part that like Stalin killed a gigamillion people, right? Like if you can get past that,
15 gigamillion.
15 gigamillions. If you can get past that, you can actually start having honest conversations with people. And I was just, to like your point of like how happy that made me, like that was, or happy that made you, like that was it. It was just like I had a really open, honest conversation, and it was like, okay, cool. So there is hope for humanity, maybe. Who's to say? But I don't know.
I do find it hard sometimes to like differentiate between what of my opinions are Marxist in origin and what are just cynical. It really is tough. Like I want to think that I just always have principled good takes, but a lot of times I am just being very cynical, and I know that must be the case. Like I just feel like there should have sprung up in response to the QAnon movement some kind of anti-Q movement that is based not on hating people and not on protesting their existence, but on loving people. And like obviously like Antifa and a lot of mutual aid groups have sprung up in response, but I don't know if it's just that they don't get the play in the media because it's not salacious. It's not as what do you call it, like headline worthy as people protesting a drag queen story hour.
Right.
The people who show up and like feed homeless people or do some kind of mutual aid action. Um,
I mean,
yeah,
that's
I wish I had the same positive outlook. I'd never do. Sorry.
yeah, no, you're fine. And I guess that's unique because I also rarely have political conversations kind of outside of the internet. But that was one where I did, and it was. But that person was also that was a special case, and I don't want to put too much faith in it because that person was like, I think they are the one who initiated it because I mentioned that I had like a Communist Party meeting coming up, and they're like, oh, tell me more about that because I kind of like initiated something in like an off the cuff remark, and they were the one who kind of were like.
Yeah.
Interested in learning more about that, which I think is very rare for most people. Most people would either ignore it or like, yeah, I don't know. But
See, most of my conversations with people when I let them know I'm not, I'm not a capitalist, I'm a communist. The first thing they want from me is to explain how I'm not crazy.
yeah,
There's just not enough exposure, and I think like the biggest thing right now is just exposing people, and maybe having that whole terminology of being a communist or a Marxist-Leninist a little bit more normalized, because I think once it becomes a little bit more normalized, then we can actually really put like some kind of plan into action to changing things.
Yeah.
But until like there's that American imperialist mindset of just Americanism, like you were talking about earlier, it's going to be hard to do anything.
Well, and if it gives you any future hope too, I mentioned I am. I might bleep out. I don't know if I've ever specified that before.
I'll put a beep.
Yeah,
a bleep
I'll
where
do
you
the same
said
thing.
it.
I'm a history teacher in public education, and I have political conversations often with 14 and 15-year-olds because that's my job. We've talked about our last unit was imperialism. Our current unit is genocide. The unit before that was something I'm blanking. But like we have very frank conversations, and I try not to be like pushy. I don't like. I think it's kind of unethical to like push my own views on 14-year-olds. So I do feel like I ride the line of keeping it truth, but not overbearing. I don't like try to color the conversation with my own takes. But I don't hint at the truth. I tell the truth. But the problem is, or not the problem, the benefit of that is that the truth is very like leftist in nature. I think like the truth is obviously leftist, or like it's if you just describe communism, you describe capitalism, any fucking 14-year-old will say obviously communism's the way to go. Like that's better for everyone. So like I'm also maybe not jaded. What's the opposite of jaded? Overly optimistic.
I know, I'm too much of an immigrant.
Yeah, that I have these conversations with children almost daily, and like all of them are like very open and like receptive to like something needs to change, and like they're very optimistic. And so like I don't know, I think that also kind of colors my my outlook, is I'm not as like maybe pessimistic. I am very hopeful because like how you said it warms your heart to like hear me say that. I'm just very proud, and I think like communism, I'm the opposite of cynical, because I think communism by its nature is a very like altruistic and like loving ideology. Like people aren't communists for personal gain. They're communists to get that homeless guy off the street, right? So it's by its nature, It is altruistic. So I think that just like by surrounding myself with communists, it's a very like healthy and positive kind of like relationship, I think.
No, I mean, to counter my point earlier, I don't think that like people are naturally tending toward the right, or that they're naturally selfish. Any of the things that like the right believes about human nature and why they think that communism or socialism cannot work. I think it's actually the case that seeing these material conditions of the U.S. empire degrade the way that they have in our lifetimes alone, just in the last 5 years, like just during COVID, let alone the last couple decades, I think people would have actually naturally gravitated towards some more mutual aid oriented, community oriented things. And that's where they're going with like the homesteading things and all the other things they're trying to do that are like still individualist based, so they're not really going to work. And I think that that's why all of the algorithms have to push Andrew Tate and Alex Jones and all the right wingers on you. That's why like literally every social media is trying to like break up your relationship, make you hate your significant other, like for some kind of weird capitalist like competition reasons, as far as like careers. Like the amount of that shit that shows up in my algorithm blows my mind. Like when I don't even like stay on relationship stuff, and it like always comes up to like man in the street interviews about like people making money. I'm like, why? Oh, because I was like clicking on capitalist stuff. I get it. Okay, now I see why I got here. But like, it really it does kind of, I think, go to show how hard they have to push. Because I still firmly believe that QAnon itself was created by the government to turn disgruntled civilians toward fascism, rather than socialism, because that's what they naturally would have gravitated toward.
Right. I mean, I
To
think Cohen's
make them
Pro
blame,
has proved that
yeah,
time and time again for the last 70 years or whatever.
You know what
That's
it
what the
reminds me of,
government
though?
will always do. Yeah. I
Reminds
don't
me of
think
Alex
that.
Jones.
Right. I mean, just being like that doesn't. That sounds like on the top, on its surface, that sounds like a wild conspiracy theory, and people wouldn't take that seriously. But if you like know anything about like what they did to Black Panther Party or like anything, it's like, oh yeah, that sounds like absolutely something they would do.
But something like they always give you like a 10% of like the truth, you know?
Yeah.
And I love like the take from Hassan Piker where he's like, I think that Alex Jones is an FBI or like a CIA agent because he's like, he sprinkles like 10% of the truth and then he's like, whoa, like the government is doing this shit and it's because they're fucking extraterrestrial vampires. You're like, dude, what?
Yeah, I don't know. Like that's Alex Jones is a wild example because like I would never be surprised if an article comes out in like 50 years that says, yeah, he was like not a CIA or an FBI agent, but like
A paid actor.
paid by or like guided. Like he did his thing. He was already going to do that thing, but he was like steered, handled, whatever you want to call it, right? And it's the same thing with QAnon. Like I would never be surprised if we find out eventually that was kind of like maybe not originally manufactured because there's always those crackpots out there that like believe the shit, but that are steered.
If you described it just on its face 30 years from now when all the current actors are removed and you said, yeah, all the poor people and all the people who were getting kicked out of their homes and becoming homeless and everything, rather than blaming the banks and the corporations that were buying up their homes and kicking them out, and rather than blame the priests that were abusing their kids and the politicians that were enabling all of that, they blamed the communists, the immigrants, and the gay people for abusing their kids and making them jobless and homeless.
Yeah.
They blamed other poor people and other marginalized people, and they thought that was not a government conspiracy to get them to do that rather than accept socialism. Right. And if you just said that on its face in another 30 years from now, people are like, oh yeah, of course that was a conspiracy. Of course that was a fascist CIA Q conspiracy. Like,
where have I heard this before? Seems so familiar.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing with like, it's the immigrants taking your job. They've used that same tactic. And like we as like communists know that like, well, obviously it's not like an immigrant or like a person of color or like a whatever taking your job. It's a capitalist giving that job to somebody else because they can exploit that person more than they can exploit you.
Immigrant? There's 400,000 people in Wyoming.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with like the government, but it's that same idea of like just not recognizing something for what it is, which is very obvious when it's placed right in front of you. And that was kind of what we talked about at the very beginning is like, it's just the frustrating part of this is like very fucking obvious what is happening and like how you're being lied to and how you're being manipulated. And like, you just don't, or you either don't or refuse to see it.
Just the fact that Catholicism is becoming like the trendy, hip, new, edgy thing to do as those same people are mad about kids, about people being predatory toward kids. It's like, who the fuck do you think you're fooling, you fucking morons? Like,
projection.
Well,
straight projection.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just bizarre. It's this weird like incongruous, dissonance, like I don't know, cognitive dissonance is what that's called, I think. Yeah, it's bizarre, and it'll never not frustrate and blow me away. Let me ask one thing: when's the next debate with Praxpin, man? I need that in my life.
I mean, I would love to do another one, but I did a second one with him that he didn't publish on his channel. I published it on mine. Like,
yeah, I remember that.
I think that's kind of curious. I actually just happened to open up TikTok last night, and he was on live, and he gets recommended to me, and I thought that was really funny.
Yeah. That was mostly just like a meme question, because dude, those debates were so fucking funny. I was telling, because Kanan hasn't seen those or listened to those, and I was telling him like a little bit about that before them. It was like, imagine the most like brain dead libertarian takes you can like want to sell your kids or like whatever, and it's just like, that's this guy, and I forget the name of his like the other guy that was on there with him for the first one, I think.
Oh, Liquid Zulu,
right? Yeah. Oh man, you got to go back and listen to those.
It gives me like Charlie Kirk vibes. Just brain
they're more like
libertarian.
I don't know, they honestly seem like they're more intelligent than Charlie Kirk, because like in their space,
that's not that hard, bro.
Well, yeah,
they're not dumb guys. No,
they're not dumb.
They're
like in their space, they know what they're talking about, but what their space is so fucking bizarre. It's just I don't know.
Well,
they're really good. They're very well studied on the misinformation that they kind of
yeah, it's well put,
compile together, and they have like, just like we have our communist library Discord server that has like thousands. Like, if you guys are not in it, everyone has to have the link. I'll have to put it in the show notes, but they compile so many links and debunks of all these same things, and yeah, you can definitely go down a rabbit hole. And these guys went down a very different one, and I liked doing those episodes, and I really liked doing all the debates that we did, but I really got negative reactions from the listeners and the people in the Discord to the point that I just stopped doing it, because people seem to really not like it. And I feel like people got the impression from those videos that I did with Praxpin and with Liquid Zulu that I like lost. And I'm okay with people thinking that, even my own fans, because for me, that just is vibes based. It's like,
Yeah.
if you don't come in just like talking over someone and throwing a bunch of shit in their face and then changing the subject every time they try to talk about the actual thing you just asked them and give a reasonable answer to it, then you're not doing social media properly. You're not doing debate bro YouTube stuff properly. And I was
Yeah.
not doing that. I'm coming into every recording incredibly high and just chill. Like
Yeah.
this is how I record. This is how I record all the time. And I'm going to be relaxed and I'm going to sit and contemplate my answers as I'm saying them. And I'm going to give you my impression of the situation. And then, like, when I go on the first part with Praxben and he tells me that actually Pinochet was not overthrown by the CIA and he was just like a negligent leader and he led his generals sow discontent until he got overthrown. And then I come back the next time and show him like mountains of evidence as the CIA's involvement in all of the discontent and then all of these debunks as to like the Pinochet regime and the so-called miracle of his economy. And then he doesn't publish that episode. It's like, well,
Right.
then I feel vindicated.
Yeah.
But also,
It makes
the
you
problem
look,
was that,
yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong.
No, sorry, I didn't
well,
mean
the
to cut you
problem
off.
was that, no, it's fine. I think the only problem was that the leftist audience, because I have people who are not straight white dudes like I am, they're a lot more sensitive to the stupid shit that that guy and Liquid Zulu say. And so I'm subjecting my audience to like psychic damage, like it's psychological damage. And it's
One
like, I don't want
visual
to do
psychic
harm to
damage.
my, yeah, like it does feel like a role playing stat, but like I don't want to do that to them. And I felt bad about doing it, but
Yeah.
I just
No, I
wasn't
get
sure
that.
if I was always hoping that it came across um in the way that like we are just better people. Like leftists are
That
simply
came
better
across to me at
people
least, but I'm biased.
than
Yeah.
these libertarians, and I don't have to like sit there and say, well, actually it is wrong to like make a bunch of rape jokes and, you know, say that people should just die if they can't work for someone else for a profit. I feel like just the inherent vibes, the way they come across of just like leftists being human beings and libertarians being a bunch of like what do you call it, like lonely white dudes who have very obvious grudges against women and minorities.
Yeah.
Like I thought that was very apparent from all those debates and episodes that I did, but if it wasn't apparent enough and it wasn't coming across the way I wanted, I don't know. But
No,
I
I
stopped
think it
doing them either
did.
way.
I mean, I can tell you just from my own personal perspective, I'm just one guy, also a straight white guy for what it's worth. Like, as like kind of like what I would consider like a level-headed normal person, like what that felt like to me was, yeah, like you did coming across really chill and like using just like basic humanity as kind of your like backdrop of like where we should move forward. Because I remember there was two things that you said in those debates that are, I don't remember. Excuse me, I don't remember if it was the first or the second, but two things that you said that were like have stuck with me and now I use in these conversations, which is I think they wanted to bring up abortion because he was really stuck on like keeping pregnancies in like tubes or something. I forget like what his little
Oh my
contraption.
god, the Matrix, the baby
The
Matrix.
Matrix thing. That was his whole thing. And I remember your response to that was, as white men or as like male identifying people, as cis white men, however you phrase it, like we don't have the space to talk about abortion. Like we shouldn't.
Yeah.
We should just let's
I
just
tried to
skip
change
this
the
talking
subject
about.
as fast as possible. Like
Yeah, no, and that came across, and like that I've still used is like when like now I get like called out for like my views on abortion. I'm like, you and I are two white males. Like, why would we have this conversation? We are not privy to this. So that was one. The second one was like it was about the whole water rights. I remember you guys talked. I think it was the second debate. You talked about like water rights. You used like this. You both kept coming back to this analogy of like water rights living upstream from a river type thing. And not to like just rehash that whole debate, we can move on. But like it was just that was just very clear based on using that hypothetical of like where you live on the course of I think it was a river, and like is it your right to dam your river if you live upstream? Just coming from that point of like people deserve water. And that's something that like every human should have access to. And they were like, well, no, if you own the water, you own it, and you can do whatever you can cut somebody off from it. And I think that just shows kind of. I mean, I don't know. All three of us agree on this. I don't really know where I'm a little
well,
belaboring this
no,
point.
it's funny. I've thought about that obviously a bit since, and I think I was doing like a caveman version of like doing like philosophy. Like there's probably the term for it. I want to say it's like a priori or something. Like I was getting at their basic assumption with my water tap argument, which is like, does it make it if there's like a water tap that just springs out of the ground and then you enclose it and keep other people from using it, even though everybody was peacefully and
Oh, that was
equitably
it, right? I
having
remember.
access to it before, do you then get to profit off of everyone else's in access to that water? And it just drills down on the very basic premise of like enclosure, sorry. And that's like where all of feudalism and capitalism stem from anyway. And so it's like doing the podcast version of like it's like if I had just gone to school for this shit, I would have the words to like to argue about this a lot better. But yeah, I'm approaching it all ass backwards because I went to school for English like an idiot. So
Well, I mean, yeah, I went to
I
school
have
for
an
history.
archaeology degree, but I
Yeah.
don't even use it.
I mean, as a history teacher, I actually get to use my history degree, but yeah, I see your point of like I should have gotten like I actually started to go to school for political science, but I swapped it, so that would have been more useful for what I do now. Well, I guess my hobby now. I guess not because I have a career.
You're training future communists eventually.
I don't know.
but also then just to do the galaxy brain meme, it's like then if I had gone to school for like philosophy or political science, I would just be even more frustrated because I'd be arguing with these guys much better and they still wouldn't change their minds anyway. And that's why you
Right.
become a Stalinist and realizes you need the guns.
Yeah, we've come full circle. Yeah, and you're just back to like fuck it. Let's just get this over with. Like this is you.
These guys are never going to learn. They don't want to learn.
Yeah. Well, what's your future for? This is way too open-ended of a question. I know we kind of talked about this off air a little bit, but like, what is like kind of the future goals for the Turn Leftist Instagram, the podcast, the kind of network you guys are building? I love to see like all of the different. It's like the Cars and Comrades, the Interventionists. You have like this roundtable kind of coming together to have these conversations. You did the one of like the Chinese report. This was like I don't know a year ago now, maybe. Like you've done these really like long form episodes. Like what is that like? Is that can we expect more of the same? Is there what are your future plans? Like what's the interview question? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like what is that for Turn Leftist and the Turn Leftist
Yeah, I mean,
empire?
hopefully exactly that. I would love to do more episodes that are more in depth. Like, I think the most recent one that we put out on Karl Marx, it's like we saved the numbers for the actual episodes that we really stand behind as like true to form episodes, and then everything else just doesn't get a number. So we had like anarcho-spirituality that came out in December of last year,
I remember that, yeah.
2022. And that was like a fantastic episode that I really enjoyed. To the point that like somebody commented on my. I love that we can just like really talk about inside meme page shit and like Instagram shit tonight too. That's like because I always have this shit that I want to talk about. But somebody commented on my page on one of my posts and I couldn't find it again because it got lost in the shuffle. But they said that I was like really passive aggressive and like kind of snarky to our guest on that episode, and I got like actually offended by that because I thought I was being pretty charitable, or at least I was trying to be.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of my just like New Jersey, Northeast kind of mannerisms, like I just come off confrontational and mean a lot of times when I don't intend to. So, to that commenter, my apologies, and to the guest of the Arch-Spirituality episode, my apologies as well. But he's doing great. I mean, he got in touch with Rev Left, which is like definitely the platform he needs because that is the kind of audience like Brett's spiritual slash leftist audience is like the perfect venue for his message. But
I'm like, intimidated by those guys. Like, I would be so scared to talk to Brett because he's so fucking smart. Like, I wouldn't know how to talk to him.
Yeah, I mean, a guy who's definitely worth fanboying over for sure.
Yeah.
But I want to do more long form episodes like that. Again, my co-hosts have just been very busy, but we did that Karl Marx episode. We're still working on the Engels one. We've had like 3 aborted attempts at doing it, and we just keep going back to it. But we will get there eventually. And this is all literally just so that we can cap it off with episode 100 and have that be about Stalin and have that be episode 100 million so we can talk about all the fucking debunks of the Holodomor and everything.
The whole
and then
Black Book of Communism or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And then have episode 101 on Mao. I just got it in my head that I wanted to do those numbered episodes in that order. And then I got the guys to sign up for that and they were like, sure. And then in practice, it's much more grueling than we expected. So we're lazy. We're all busy with work and whatnot. So
no, totally understandable. I started a podcast in like 2020. We talked about it a couple episodes ago because it was called the Baby Leftist Podcast, and it was about like just trying to bring people on board because it was a time during 2020 where it was kind of a lot of people were coming over. And the amount of like we did like very long form. The premise was we read a book, like we would read a classic Marxist book and then like do a book report on it, but go into like the deep history of it, the context in which it was written. And my partner kind of totally flaked out, and so it ended up just being me reading like State and Revolution and like Utopian and and it's just like this is fucking. I was doing like thesis level work every other week, and I'm like, this is completely sustainable. So we had to stop. But I understand like the when you do those deep dives, it's like so you want to do a really good job and you want to do this really deep dive and you want to do all this good stuff, but then that on the flip side of that, it does take like an incredible amount of work, and I understand like the time and just the energy, and like not everybody has under capitalism the free time to just devote 60 hours to just reason and
well, that
whatever.
doesn't usually pay your bills. You got to work a full-time fucking job to live, if not like a part-time job on the side just to save some money, and then you're like, all right, what do I do with the rest of my time?
Yeah.
Read 600 pages of Das Kapital. It's a lot, man.
Well, that's why I just have these guys read it for you. You guys are doing what the most recent one was that you posted to your feed was the intervention reads the Lenin. I forget the Lenin text, but that one was cool. And then you guys did do Capital last year, I think.
Yeah, we did a couple
chapters
of Capital.
like the early 11, 12, 13 chapters, something like that. Yeah.
Let me take this opportunity, if I could, to plug Lenin in 45 Volumes, which is a newly created Instagram page. I don't know if he's on TikTok as well, but it's a guy who's doing that kind of doctorate level work as well. And Left of the Projector Pod, Evan just showed him to me and sent me his page. And yeah, Evan's a great guy. Have him on too. He'll definitely come on.
Oh,
and so I checked out this other guy's page, and oh yeah, I mean,
what was it? 45. What was it?
Lenin in 45 volumes.
Lenin.
Underscore between each word.
Okay, as we all reach for our phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everyone should, but yeah, he's doing that same kind of thing. He's doing like doctorate level work and then breaking it down into accessible TikTok level stuff.
Right.
We need people like that,
Yeah, and that's kind of what our vision for this, because we're still early on. Like our vision is we do these kind of conversational episodes. Usually we report more on news. We stay away from Trump news because I find just kind of boring. But we'll do maybe an Alex World update and then a Palestine update and just kind of anything that's relevant to leftism, I guess, or can be you can have a conversation about it through a Marxist lens. We do that. But our vision is kind of to do long form. I know we've been working, or you've been working on doing a longer form Yugoslavia history, because Kenan is Bosnian, so he's a Bosnian immigrant. So he's the one in front of the Yugoslavian flag. So we want to do a long form Yugoslavia episode, and then I want to do a long form the experience of becoming a teacher and doing a student teaching. To become a teacher in America, you have to do a full semester of unpaid internship for 50 hours a week to be certified as a teacher, which is fucking completely insane for what will eventually be a minimum wage job or almost a minimum wage job. No other industry requires a 5-month unpaid internship at 50 hours a week or 45 hours a week. So I want to have a longer, I've been writing this script or this essay or op-ed, whatever you want to call it, of what it's the experience of being a teacher as a Marxist. And so we want to do these longer form things.
It's like a video essay, I guess.
Yeah, it just takes time, man. We get it. It's just it's hard to put the amount of research and love and care that you want that it deserves to and then actually do it. So
maybe we could do on big landmark episodes, we could drop things that,
on
episode 50, 25, or something like that.
Because we're only on this is episode 18, I think.
Yeah. It's weekly.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember when I was a young cringe libertarian, I remember reading a libertarian argument about why markets work, and they always use these so examples, right? Of a man loves carving ducks, but he can't find that he can make a living carving ducks because there's just no market for it. So he gets a job as a welder, and then he carves ducks in his free time at night. So the market works. He still makes a living. The market gets its welding, and he gets to carve his ducks. And I'm like, this sounds like a very unsatisfied man. This sounds like a guy who's going to go nuts and shoot up his welding shop because he wanted to carve ducks and he was forced to weld. But when you're a young 23-year-old libertarian, this sounds like it makes perfect sense, and you should condone markets.
That doesn't pass the sniff test if you think about it for longer than 15 seconds, or at least if you actually think about it, if you critically think about
it. Yeah. But then where it applies to what we're talking about, when it comes to podcasts, they are long form. When it comes to breaking down theory, that is very grueling. It takes a lot of labor, and it does not pay well. People do not want to pay you to do it at all.
Yeah. I have no illusions that we'll ever be paid for this. We do this for fun.
But I mean, I am still forever obsessed with because if you are continuing to do this, if you continue to do this for any length of time without the motive of profit, it is because you're obsessed. It is because you are just nuts about this. I'm sure you guys are, I am. And so I am still forever thinking of ways to make more content. And I always come back to something I'm sure you guys are familiar enough with the Reddit commenting style of the way that the trees expand.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And I feel there should be something that explains it's the anti-black book of communism, the red book, but in the format of here are the topics, an outline that. Here's the very easy to get into outlines, as short as possible in the quickest things. And then if you really want to get further in, you just keep expanding and expanding on all those points. But you'd have to control, maybe to write a book like that, instead of having people put it together any any fascist who wants to come in and shit up the place. But like, I feel like some kind of long form explainer for debunks like that would be very useful to just compile together, if not direct people to read themselves, because that'd be boring. But I'm also always thinking like, how do you condense things like that into those TikTok style of social media videos? Because that's the thing that it's just so frustrating to me that you could do something like that guy Lenin in 45 volumes, and I'll be surprised if he gets like a huge following from it, because it's not like the grab you, like get in your face kind of thing.
No,
You have to be
deep in this
dedicated to it.
world to like
Like
want to even watch that. Yeah.
you have to want to know, and I don't say that to denigrate him. Like he's doing fantastic work. I think it's unfortunate that so much of it is geared toward like the ADD style. So I'm always forever trying to think of how do you break this stuff down into like a 60-second like thing that grabs people in the first couple of seconds. Like, how do you ask a really provocative question and say, does communism fail every time it's tried? Well, actually, it's worked better than capitalism in such and such and such and such. Like,
Yeah.
it's difficult to come up with, but
It's a lot of information that you have to put in 60 seconds. And you can only do so much cutting of dead space and like words that are not necessary to get your point across. But you'd have to do a series. But then people would have to be interested in clicking the next video and then the next video.
Yeah, and then the kind of the format of just scrolling, that's not really like
it's
how you
not.
reach people too. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, or it's you're kind of screwed on both ends. Like it's an uphill battle for sure.
Yeah,
you kind of have to like make short videos where you debunk one thing at a time, and then maybe have a whole bunch of them ready to go at once when you get the onslaught of the same 12 tired talking points so that you can just put them out there all at once.
You know who does that well? Actually, we were just talking about him before the show, and this is actually just a coincidence. This came up. There's this TikToker named Rathbone, I think is his name.
Mm-hmm.
He's that white guy, kind of like bigger hair. He does that. But I think most of his stuff recently has been about Israel Palestine. But it'll just be like and he's also just done general capitalism stuff too. Is like he'll just have like one talking point that you see on the right or in liberal spaces, and then just kind of like the back and forth like debunking of it. I think he does that fairly effectively, and I think he has a pretty large following. I think he's doing pretty well on TikTok. So
yeah, on TikTok, I think he's like almost 1 million.
Oh, okay, great. So
that's a perfect example of what I was saying.
Yeah, I think he's because what you described reminded me exactly of that. Like he's doing, I think I think he's doing it really well.
Who's that guy they had on the deprogram that always makes those? I think was he Filipino? I'm not sure.
Oh, James Rewald.
You talking about Bad and Banana?
I can't. No, it's not.
No, it's James Rewald.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's who it is. Where he just like he makes.
He did the CIA one.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. Oh my god, they just had so many people on. It's kind of hard to remember. I follow him on TikTok, but it's I feel like TikTok suppresses those people even if you're following.
100%. That's what Sally mentioned. The same thing. Like she's on like her 4th TikTok account or something because she just keeps getting banned. And I know like Turn Left, you guys are like on V6 or whatever right now.
Yeah, it's funny. They keep banning my account and then they let me have it back. So now I have 4 accounts, but I still have my original one.
Yeah, I follow multiple. Like if I search, like if I go to like where did I see that meme, and I go to the search bar and I just type in Turn Leftist, it's like a wall of Turn Leftists. And I'm like, okay, cool.
Oh yeah.
Should we just make a second account just in case we
just
get
in
banned?
case? I mean, yeah, I don't know. We don't. Really
I mean, you have to make a backup before you get deleted so that we can direct people to it at least.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, and then just post all of our videos on the backup too.
I don't even fucking.
I love it. It'd be
one.
funny if the backup got bigger than the regular.
Sure.
Like, oh fuck.
Well, I feel like that happens, right? So it's just disproportionate because of kind of like the what's it called, shadow banning or ghost banning, whatever it's called, where like you just get like de algorithmed.
A lot of the algorithm is just fucking lucky, man. Like at the end of the day, sometimes it's just luck. It's just you have to have the right person to see it that shares it or whatever.
I don't know. My Instagram, my personal feed is like my partner, some like random, like stuff that I like, news stuff I want to follow, and then just like 140 meme accounts, like leftist meme accounts, like all of the main ones. Every city's CPUSA, every city's PSL. So like I get like I want to be in that vacuum. That's my Instagram is not like where I'm trying to like be enlightened. That's where I want to like see tanky memes and like that. I have curated 100% to that point.
100%. But I'm talking about like YouTube.
Yeah. Like scrolling like TikTok and Twitter and YouTube. That's a different thing. Like, cause you don't get like promoted. I guess you do get like promoted shit on Instagram, but not as much as like.
Here's the thing about like the YouTube algorithm. Your first video, they'll promote it to everybody, and then just like the click-through rate. And then as you post more and more videos, it gets less click-through rates because they just show it to less and less people. So you have to have like 7 videos ready to post every single week that are like fantastic, like off the bat, or else like the algorithm will just drop you for the most part. You have to be really lucky.
Wow.
Yeah, or shorts is a good way to do it, but
Yeah, you have all the inside scoop on like YouTube shit.
well, I've been doing shorts and TikToks and bullshit for like years now, just grinding at it with my own personal account of gaming and shit. But I'm like, fuck
Right.
this. I want to make an impact to society. Let's do a commie account.
I could talk about social media strategy all day because I obviously consume my life with just like shit posting memes, and I obviously haven't figured it out because I've been at it for 5 years and I have 45,000 followers on my meme page. It's like that's a pitiful number for the amount of time that I've
No,
spent doing it. Like it's great for like Marxist Leninism, sure, because it's not popular in the U.S., but like yeah, it's just pitiful for the amount of time that I've spent, and I've always been trying to think of like what are just different angles. Like, how do you go viral? Like, what is the thing that you got to do? Because obviously, controversy drives people. Like, when you're trying to think of like, what's the thing to post? It's like whatever makes somebody angry, whatever pisses people off, gets them into the
Right.
comments, posting a whole bunch of comments, gets them all talking. That's the best thing. And
Well, if you've been on Twitter recently, that's what it is. Like, if or even Threads. Like, we talked about getting a Threads, dude. I don't want to because like if you scroll Threads, it's like my Threads account, like
I don't know.
Threads
anything about
knows,
Threads.
or and Twitter is the same way. Like who I follow is like I mentioned, like 99% just like tanky accounts, and then every thread I get is like pro-Israel, pro-MAGA, and it's very intentional that they're doing that. Is because it wants me to engage with them because they want people to engage on their platform, and it's just like I just find that so like gross and disingenuous.
That happens
like,
all the time on
no,
Twitter.
I know that's a Twitter thing too, and I'm like,
All
I don't,
the time.
I don't want to be a part of that. So I'm like, can we just not do that anymore? Like, I don't want to. We debated doing Threads, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to be a part of that like cesspool.
No, it's
of,
fine.
Like,
We already have so many fucking things on so many goddamn accounts.
Yeah.
I don't want to think about Threads now.
Yeah.
It's just a goddamn.
But to your point, that's what it is, right? Like they want to feed you controversy so that you engage with their website, so that you see their ads is kind of what it comes down to, and it's just unfortunate that that's the way it is. Because even on like my YouTube feed, like my YouTube is very similar. My personal YouTube is very similar to like my Instagram, where it's like Deprogram, Hakeem, Ugopnik, like all of these accounts. And then in my recommended videos to this day is still like Ben Shapiro videos.
Fucking Steven
like,
Crowder, like,
and like,
who brought
yeah.
this Neanderthal to my fucking For You
like,
page?
YouTube knows that's not what I want to watch, but they're still pushing it on me anyway because they're hoping I'll engage with it and hate comment or whatever.
the only thing we can do to use that to our advantage, I think, is to again like compile a bunch of resources, like links and like for when people go source or context, like compile all those things and then link to them on the underneath the Ben Shapiro video, underneath the Elon Musk tweet, and just grab those people and say like gender is not real, like, and then just link to a whole bunch of sources that explain exactly why you're wrong to say that men can't be women and women can't be men. Like you're wrong to even talk about gender to begin with, and like literally biological science proves you wrong. Like you just don't know basic biology, despite what you're saying on Twitter, sir.
I've been taking that.
I think that would be useful, like because it would get engagement at least, but
Yeah.
and maybe we'll drive clicks to your website if you can do that.
Maybe. I mean, on my personal one, I didn't want clicks, but I have been doing. I do a similar thing. Well, not quite similar, but more shitposty than that. Where like I also, being a Southern leftist and then an Arizonan leftist, I am pretty deep into like gun culture, very comfortable with guns, and like very pro gun. And so I do follow a lot of gun YouTubes and like gun YouTubers, gun tubers, whatever they're called. And then so like anytime, inevitably, every fucking episode or every video that they post, they'll mention like Commie California, where you can't have these guns or whatever. And like I just rush to the comments and talk about like Reagan banned guns in California, and like just like I'm very quick to point out that like most gun legislation was enacted by Republicans, and like try to shine the truth on this. And I have fun trolling those people in there because they just inevitably will say something about commie, like the commies take your guns, and it's like you obviously know nothing, like even American history, but like actual communist history.
Just put a picture of like a Maoist militia.
Yeah, like they're wrong in like multiple ways. So it's like you could not be more wrong. Like you're wrong in every possible facet of this conversation.
Well, there was like, oh, Obama's gonna take your guns. The 2 terms of Obama passed, nothing happens, and they're like, no, now Hillary's gonna take your guns. I'm like, bro.
Yeah, and it's like they'll never accept it. Like Trump passed more gun bans and gun legislation than Obama did, and it's like they won't even accept that argument. So I go back into like history of like the Mulford Act and stuff, where it's like all of the gun laws was designed to like stop the Black Panther Party in California, which was when Reagan was governor. And so there's a lot of like historical evidence that like
when
Republicans
lefties get guns, they're like, all right, well, let's calm this down now.
So I don't know. That's what I do when I get fed those videos. You have a different approach. So yours is maybe a little more like holistic and helpful for humanity. Mine's more trolly, but to each their own, I guess.
I'm just too mean. I wish like my podcast and meme page are so misappropriately named. Like just named wrong. Just misnamed. I don't know what the word is for it, but I don't turn anyone leftist. Like I'm just so mean to people, and if people are like coming at me with even the slightest bit of like the wrong take, I just berate them, just endlessly berate them. It's so bad. I lose so many followers.
I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily a bad way to go. Cause, well, I don't know. Maybe it is, but
Oh my
who am I to say? I
God.
don't know anything about social media. Kanan is our social media guy. I'm like a fucking boomer when
Dude,
it
yeah,
comes
like,
to this shit.
let's see where we are.
Yeah, well, fair. Well, we've only been doing this for like a couple months, but yeah,
no,
I don't know.
it takes time, man. It takes
Yeah,
time.
I don't know. The whole thing is,
It's
I don't know.
no, it's funny, man. It's like, what are you gonna do with it? You either reply, watch their video, and then reply, and then nothing happens, and then they gain views and your audience, or you just ignore it and then they still grow larger. They're backed by the fucking government. You know, at the end of the day, they're backed by the oligopoly. That they want this content pushed out, and there's really not much you could do about it except educate people when it does pop up. Because they're gonna, I mean, Steven Crowder has like how many, like 5 million followers?
Well, he's also banned, I think, from like he's back on Twitter now, or he has like an exclusive with. I forget.
I have no clue.
I don't know.
Who the fuck cares? That guy's a
That's the
fucking
thing.
loser.
It's like I don't know.
But
The problem is I don't follow conservative like media enough to like actually talk about it because I for one thing I don't care. But like I don't know, I just like I'm not in that world anymore. Like I don't follow mainstream news. Like if I followed like more like liberal news, like or even like Democratic Socialist news, like David Pakman or like Sam
Fuck
Cedars
David
Majority
Pakman.
Report,
Fuck that
and like
guy.
those kind of guys, right? Like they're still reporting on like electoral news and like kind of the Democrat Republican debates and stuff. And I don't even follow that anymore. I've moved like further to the left than getting like so like I don't know.
I think the
Yeah,
closest
something
center
Mike.
person I watch would be Kyle Kalinske, because that's
Okay.
who turned me to the left originally. You know, slowly, because I was like social democrat like 2015, and by the time it was like 2017, 2018, I was already a fucking Marxist, right? But he honestly has some decent takes. I just think he doesn't want to say he's a socialist, but I think deep inside he's actually a fucking socialist.
I don't know. I don't actually follow Kyle Clancy so much. But
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mike. Did you have something to add there?
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of probably closet tankies in like the mainstream, more like Kyle Kalinske or trying to think who else that I had heard of that would be on the same level as him. I just feel like there are a lot of people, maybe even some of the Chapo guys,
Humanist
who are
Report, maybe?
secretly. What was that? Sorry,
The Humanist Report, maybe.
I'm not familiar with that
No.
one. No.
Those guys out there, yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, aren't the Chapo guys like,
Are they
if not like
tankies?
Marxists, aren't they like socialists? I mean, aren't they openly socialist?
Yeah, but I feel like they're probably like more even tankies than they let on for their show because they realize it's profitable to do that. Like,
Right.
I don't know. I just wonder sometimes. Like, I feel like some of the things that they say, like, what really got me was when they did their live shows over the summer, and one of the intros was their producer reading something. It was like a skit, and he's like supposed to be Justin Trudeau, I think, and he says, "Wait, what is their audience? Dingists? Are they something else?" Or like he names like a slew of like Marxist-Leninist terms,
Right. Like deeper
and then they're
knowledge
like,
in Marxist stuff.
and they're like, oh, they're liberals. Okay, never mind. We're fine. We don't have to like do anything, like take any extra precautions for
Oh,
these guys. And I just thought it was the funniest thing. And I was like, why would these guys even put that in there unless they like secretly? And they also made a reference to Ben Norton recently, which unless they like are pretty deep into this, like why would they even know who Ben Norton
Right.
is, let alone like reference him jokingly?
That reveals layers of like, okay, you're well read into like, or like well submersed into like Marxist.
Yeah, it's like
that
you at least know
universe.
who the tankies are and like the big names of the tankies too.
Right.
But I also think like, what do you guys think of this as like a social media strategy? Because it's like you see the right who is constantly cheering on any of their victories that are rooted in hurting others. Like they're actually happy about like all the shit that they're doing to immigrants at the border. They're happy about the kids in cages. They're happy about literally trans suicide. Like they joke about it like it's a fucking funny thing to them. And it's hard for the left in the West, especially, to get that kind of like libidinal enjoyment in politics because we get so few victories. Because we actually would be happy if everyone got healthcare and free college, even the people that are fucking joking about us killing ourselves because we're so depressed. It's like that's how humane we are,
Yeah.
as opposed to like how anti-human those people are. And so I feel like the move might have to be for us at some point to actually find the Chinese and Russian propaganda that they think we're all finding that is cheering on Americans dying of COVID because they're too stupid to wear a mask or take the vaccines or something. It's like, I don't know if that propaganda exists, but I feel like that might be the thing that lets us go viral as tankies or something. But just like, where is the anger porn for the Marxist-Leninists that like cheer on the demise of America. Like I'm not even finding it among like the really tanky heads like, that I'm hanging out with.
The only thing that reminds me kind of like even close to that was during COVID, the subreddit, like, what the fuck was the name of that subreddit? Like it was like a Darwin Award type thing, but it was about COVID. So it was like just the different people that died from COVID that were like on the rise.
Oh, the
Herman Cain died from
Herman Cain Award.
The Herman Cain Award. That was what it was called, right? So like when Herman Cain died, like that was like kind of close to what you're describing, I guess, but not even really.
It's gotta still be around.
Yeah, I'm sure it's still there, right? But like, no, I know what you mean because it's like, yeah, we've talked a couple episodes ago about like how we like. And that's actually kind of segues into our next, I think, what final kind of like talking point is like electoral politics of like incrementalism is like bullshit. And like, that's not what we want as Marxists is like, just pushing the needle forward just bit by bit. But were that to happen, like to your point of like, yeah, if we could get everyone healthcare, like we would be happy. And like, that is, we'll say that we'll take that as a win. And I lost my second point, but yeah, I don't know. It was just, yeah. And then the second point was just like, yeah, it does come back to just being like altruistic. Like, yes, even though you are like ideologically like a fascist, like I still would be happy to have a blanket healthcare or blanket like social safety nets put on you if it also helps somebody else.
It's like, I don't, at the end of the day, I want everybody to have healthcare, even the fucking worst fascists out there. Because like I don't hate people, I hate their ideology. And maybe, just maybe, if they experience a little bit of what they fucking hate, a little bit of socialism, a little bit of, social crumbs that we could throw their way, they might realize, hey man, my mom can go get cancer treatment now, and then we don't have to pay. Maybe these lefties aren't so fucking bad.
Oh, for sure. I think that like a universal healthcare system that actually that works.
Let's be real. That's never gonna fucking happen.
No, it probably won't ever happen.
So
but
what's
I
all
think
the point of even talking about it?
Like if like hypothetically like a universal healthcare system were to be implemented that worked, that was kind of like robust in America, like I think that would de-radicalize like immediately overnight like a lot of right-wing people. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I think that could like, because I think that's the sticking point, I think, or at least it was kind of under Obama's era, maybe not so much anymore on the right side, on the conservative right side, is like that was like their big point was like we don't want Obamacare, right? That was kind of like one of the big talking points. And I think if that were ever implemented, you would have lost a lot of that fervor and that anger. I don't know if that's still the case. Sorry,
but I just think even if like I want everybody to have health care, but if everybody has health care, the capitalist imperialist state stays. It gives them, it's like when in the 30s with FDR and the CPUSA demanded something be done, they threw crumbs like social security, blah, 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 but that allowed them to survive.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, as much as I want everybody to have health care, let this place fucking crumble. Let it crumble because that's the only way it fucking actually changes.
That comes back to what I was saying is like, yeah, it's like it makes you sound like a monster when you're like, yeah, let's just get this over with. Like, it's going to fall. Let's make it fall.
30,000 people die. 100,000 people die. Everything changes. Way less people die over the long term. Yeah. It's like a sacrifice. It sounds horrible, but it's like realistically, or 30,000 people die every fucking year until the end of existence. Yeah. And how many people is that in 100 years? It's fucking 3 million people because of healthcare.
That's a really hard conversation to have, right?
It is.
People don't want to have that conversation, or like, and not to say that that's the conversation because that makes us sound like weird. I don't know. The bad type of acceleration is because like it's not what we're advocating for, obviously. Like what, Mike, your point to the very beginning was like there is a third way, is just to stop and like just to kind of find that third way, and I think that that's possible. But I wanted to kind of steer.
I think we're all just going Maoist third worldist a little bit.
Yeah. Let's reel this back in a little bit. We've been going for about an hour and 10 minutes, Mike. I don't want to check in with you. What's your like time frame? I can't go too much longer, so I had one kind of final talking point, which was kind of I wanted to ask you about your electoral politics, and kind of a couple questions within that. But before we do, are you okay on time to go for another, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, I'm really not limited on time. I already put the kids to bed.
Okay, cool. So my question to you then is like, we asked the same thing to Sally, which is like, where, like, do you, I mean, obviously we know your stance. I mean, just as a Marxist, I can guess your stance on like electoral politics. We've had conversations about this quite a few times now of like the nature of voting as a Marxist. And then we've actually also got a lot of backlash for that of like, oh, 2 white guys saying you shouldn't vote. And so we've had conversations about that aspect of it. So it's like, we've run the gamut of this conversation, but we wanted to like kind of, I guess, have you join us on that conversation. Is like, do you have a candidate like a third party candidate or an alternative candidate that you're looking at? Do you even bother with voting anymore? And I know from listening to Turn Leftist for years, kind of more or less where you stand on this. But for our listeners and for Kanan, and just to have the conversation, what's your view on electoral politics? Open-ended question.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems kind of silly. I mean, if you can make a change in your local elections, if you think that like there's some, I don't know, city councilman or something who's running on outlawing trans people entirely, yeah, go vote in that election if you think you can reasonably stop that guy from doing that. But national electoral politics, I think you're just fooling yourself. I think it's literally a placebo, and I think a lot of people kind of fool themselves into the idea of, well, at least I did something, and if I vote and then also go organize, then I'll be doing the most effective thing. And that's great, but the numbers really tell us that a lot of those people are voting and then not organizing. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's the people who are showing up to DSA and PSL meetings who are not voting. I think it's all those voters who are not going to the DSA and PSL meetings. Like, whatever
Yeah.
your party is, like, we can very clearly see who are the guilty parties here, who are the ones who are letting this country slide further and further to the right with every election because they just want to vote for the lesser evil.
Right.
I don't know if you guys remember, and I forget what it even was that one of you said in the last thing that you were talking about, but do you guys remember when Biden was saying, like, we can cure cancer? He was literally running on that. Like,
Yeah,
he
that
was like saying we can cure cancer,
I
and
think it
now
was
he's
also
doing
like
a
one of his
fucking
first
genocide.
State of the Union. He talked about it. Yeah.
Oh, hold my beer. Goes
Yeah.
bombs Yemen.
Also,
It's like, fuck,
fun
man.
fact, I like to bring this up a lot too, is that like Cuba, a socialist country, has a vaccine for cancer or for lung
Yeah,
cancer.
they have
Or
a
they
lung
have
cancer
preventative
vaccine.
vaccines for it. You know what I mean? Like they have a pretty advanced lung cancer. Like I don't know the details of it. I'm not a doctor, but like preventative vaccine, I think. So like not only is your point stands, like it goes double, right? Like not only is Biden a fucking genocidal monster now and went completely hard the opposite direction of what he promised, socialist countries are offering that as a solution.
Yeah.
It's just frustrating.
Yeah. So yeah, I will vote for the PSL endorsed candidate, which will be a third party candidate. Um, that's all I could consider doing, and then vote some down ballot like elections that might matter in some kind of way. But I can't really see it making that much of a difference. I feel like it is very much just the Maggie's little steering wheel in the Simpsons car if you're
Right.
voting.
It's a good analogy.
You know what I think could make a big difference? Real quick, sorry.
No, you're fine.
In say like this electoral process, if we somehow created some sort of if you had enough signatures to get a third party candidate like a PSL onto this talking stage when they have
Like
the
a debate.
debates, because dude, if you had somebody up there that was speaking on the Marxist
We've
behalf,
talked about that, yeah.
yeah, dude. Imagine the people like thinking they have no other options, and hear this person making complete sense with these two fucking buffoons who are like
Yeah.
literally about to croak.
Well, I mean, I don't know much about Garcia and De La Cruz, the PSL candidates, but like from what I have seen on their social media presence, and like, yeah, I agree with you, Mike. I'm obviously going to vote for them, or if they're still available to be voted for at that time. But like watching their social media accounts, watching their like interviews, watching their like conversations and their town halls and stuff, is they are so like, if there were ever a world in which we could see them on stage with Biden and Trump, like it would be so embarrassing for these 70, 80-year-old white men, because like these women are so articulate and they're so like well spoken, and just like like you said, they can form coherent sentences. So like it would just be embarrassing and just so great to see.
Well,
But
think
obviously that'll
about,
probably
like,
never happen.
We would get 0.5% of a vote without them up on the stage. With them up on the stage, you know damn right we'd get at least 10% of the fucking vote. Because you have enough people to swing toward them, because they're not communists, they're socialists technically. So maybe even that like negative word out of the party just having a socialist party, they might get like 10%. 10% is enough to maybe even start forming like a bigger coalition, and then maybe democratically taking over the fucking country, which is probably not going to happen.
Right.
But there's something there.
Yeah, I don't know. We got to probably stop asking guests this question, because we get the same answer as like, yeah, in local elections you could, but overall no. And it's I don't know. I think for a Marxist perspective, that is kind of a
Well, it
there's
just kind
not a
of
lot
proves the
wiggle room
point. Like
there.
people's lost hope,
Yeah.
like in like electoral, processes in general.
Well, that was kind of my last question I wanted to ask. I know we had some Palestine news to report, but I don't know, tonally that seems like a weird shift and kind of out of place right here, as well as the border bill, where the GOP sank their own border bill, which would have also included Israel aid. We were going to talk about, maybe we can save that for like a news heavy episode next week.
Why not?
Well, Mike, we want to thank you for first of all stopping by and having an awesome chat. Is there anything we didn't mention that you want to talk about? Is there anything, and by all means, feel free to kind of floor is open for all of your plugs and anything you want to promote that you got going on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. As always, there was something that I felt like I wanted to make some kind of point that I forgot about, and I'm sure it was not as insightful as I thought it was at the time. But that's how it always is. I'm sure you guys always feel like that when you record an episode
Oh
too.
yeah, 100%.
But yeah, I mean, I just appreciate you guys having me on. I always love talking like the real inside baseball about like Instagram commie bullshit like that because I just don't get an opportunity to on my show because I
That's
try
where
to
I
keep
live,
it
man.
a little
Yeah.
more serious. But yeah, if anybody likes any of the rants that I took tonight, yeah, come and hang out on my podcast in my Discord. I will send links to everybody. Follow all of my different pages because I go live almost every morning
Mhm.
and just like smoke a joint in my car and talk
Yeah.
about anti-imperialist shit with
We've
people.
had conversations on my personal on that live stream.
I just don't. Well, what's your username? Or if you
I
don't
don't
have to
want to
divulge
say it
me,
now, but I'll tell you after. Yeah.
Okay.
Doxing yourself.
But yeah. So I mean, it's fun. I find it entertaining because it's an outlet that I definitely need. The more I find that people in my personal life are more like people living in the Third Reich than I expected them to be. Because that is like when I say that I'm like just disgusted more and more with Americans and their takes. That is what I feel like. I feel like there are just like when we're talking about now, like the PSL endorsed candidates who would just blatantly embarrass any of the mainstream candidates on a stage. It's a really crushing realization to find that that has always been the case. Like there have always been candidates like that in every single election for our entire lives and going back even further than that, and they've just never gotten the time of day. And like that's how stagnant this political system is. And as much as we think that maybe we're making some ground because material conditions are getting worse and a lot more people are getting radicalized, it's like the mainstream still has not moved a fucking inch, and it's so crazy to watch. Aside from like Bernie getting a little bit of mainstream attention there, it's like it really is saddening. But that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like when I say that like we're kind of trending towards this like Maoist third worldist arc, it's like where do you go from being like a Bernie bro sock dem? It's like you start to get more and more jaded and pissed off at Americans around you who have this information at their fingertips and still refuse to find it because it makes them emotionally uncomfortable with their position and their privilege and everything. It's like, yeah. So that's my plug. It's like hate your fellow Americans. I don't know. That's terrible.
I totally get. I mean, I get that, right? Like it is like where does that frustration has to go somewhere? Like I've mentioned like every 10 minutes for the last hour and a half that like I'm like there's different things that frustrate me about this whole process, and like that goes somewhere. And like what you're referring to is like, yeah, where else is that supposed to go? Eventually, that kind of goodwill and optimism is going to run out, and it turns into kind of like what you mentioned of just like not hatred per se, but just like I don't know. Aggression,
Pessimism.
I don't know. Pessimism, I guess. Yeah, pessimism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you could be pessimistic but opportunistic at the same time. You know, you
Sure.
could be like, "Oh, this is a fucking shithole country," but if an option pops up, you know, we gotta fucking take it.
Yeah.
Don't be like, "Oh, that option is not gonna do anything." You still gotta try.
And the ideology itself props us up, right? Because like we said, it's an altruistic ideology, but it's also like an optimistic for the future ideology. Like that's like the whole part of like the vanguard and like preparing for a better future. So like I think just the idea of Marxism-Leninism as itself does a lot of the heavy lifting.
Maybe just better structure in general from the the far left.
Yeah. Well, that's why, as we say every episode, go join an org, right? Go join PSL. Go join CPUSA. Go join DSA if it's all you got.
Ew.
But, you know, try to do better than DSA. But, you know, they do good
Or
organizing.
at the very least, start just like looking up some basic history and terms, things that you're scared of. It's like I'll leave a teaser. If everyone could please like follow all my backup accounts on Instagram. It's like Turn Leftist 1312, Turn Leftist V6, Turn Leftist 4. I will go out live on one of them, whichever one has the ability, because that's the thing they take away the first. Like as soon as you get like a violation, they just take away your ability to go live because they think you're gonna go like shoot up a place and broadcast it, I guess. But like,
Christ.
and which is clearly like what you're going to do after you post like a slightly offensive meme that they take down. That's like the first thing you're gonna go do, right? But but no, I mean, follow me on my backup accounts, and I'll tease it with this. If you guys want to know why we Marxists always support dictators like Xi Jinping, Putin, and Assad, but we're actually not homophobes and red fash, come and I'll explain critical support on the live for you guys. Or you can just like
Critical
look it up
support.
for yourself, you libs. Like,
Yeah. I had a great conversation about critical support. I had to talk to a liberal about China, and I was like, yeah, fucking, it's called critical support. Look it up, dumbass. So I could not love what you just said more.
I just point out the facts. Like, look how many fucking Lightspeed, trains China's made in the past 15 years, and then it's like a lot more than the world combined.
You could point to poverty, homelessness. The literacy rates. There's everything. Like, there's a lot of details you could point to, but like backing up a second is like, it's more like what you said. It's like there are these like ideologies, or like not even ideologies, but like these like tendencies, I guess you could call them. Critical support, dialectical materialism. There's like just like if you understand these very basic tendencies, you see the world in just a different way. So anyway, I don't want to take us down another conversational rabbit hole. We were kind of teasing.
Yeah, sorry guys.
Go back in. No, that was my fault. So yes, go follow Turn Leftist. All of the Turn Leftists. Go follow all of the people that Turn Leftist follows. Discord, YouTube, podcast. Certainly the podcast.
You on Twitter?
Twitter? You on Twitter?
Yeah, Sterling runs that. It's Turn Leftist Pod. He still goes on there once in a while, I think.
Sweet. Well, thanks so much again, Mike. We really appreciate you coming by. That was an awesome conversation.
Thank you guys.
Hope
Appreciate
to
it.
do it again sometime if you're ever in the neighborhood, as it were.
Yeah, anytime. Thank
Sweet.
you guys.
Well, there you have it. That was the interview with Mike from Turn Leftist. Hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. It was very fun. We definitely, I guess, before and then during and now after, just want to once again highly recommend go follow everyone we talked about. Lenin in 45 volumes. We talked about all of the Sally Hates Capitalism. All of the podcasts we mentioned, we talked about quite a few. I can't recall them all off the top of my head, but as you listen, I'm hoping you're following Seriously Wrong, Intervention, Left of the Projector. Definitely follow Turn Leftist. Rev Left, of course. Yeah, just give your love to these content creators and these people that are kind of in that leftist space, like trying to spread that message of leftism.
I don't think people realize how much effort they put into this.
Yeah.
To put into their research and everything, because a lot of them have to work full-time jobs to make money to survive while this being their hobby. So this is almost a full-time job.
Take it from us who have full-time jobs and do this as a hobby. This takes a lot of work to kind of do.
Yeah, and they're putting out like full thesis on books that they've read, which is like a whole nother level of dedication. So we really appreciate them. We want them to succeed. So please go follow these people and their channels. So help them out as well. Let's push upon our agenda upon the American people.
But in addition to following them, follow us. Give us
us
a like and a fair follow and a subscribe and a share. You listen to the audio version wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, wherever. I don't know. Is it a Stitcher thing? I don't know. We're everywhere you get your podcasts. Follow us on the YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, go follow the audio podcast. If you're listening to the audio podcast, go check out our YouTube where we post the full episodes if you ever want to see our ugly mugs live and in living color.
Speak for yourself.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Or our YouTube shorts. Kanan is doing a ton of work putting out these YouTube shorts that are going up on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
I put them on Twitter as well. I post everything on Twitter.
I just don't go on. That's like what's the Lion King fucking the where you don't go.
I forgot what that's called, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Twitter's the one place I don't go anymore. But yeah, give us a follow. Revolutionary Rhetoric Podcast, basically wherever Rev Rhetoric Pod at Twitter. Revolutionary Rhetoric everywhere else. RevolutionaryRhetoric@gmail.com. Send us an email. Let us know what you think. Thanks so much for listening. As always, we always appreciate the support. A special thanks to Mike from Turn Leftist for an awesome conversation. Hope to do something with you in the future, man. And with that said, anything else?
We'll see you guys next week.
See you next week. We'll be back to news, no guests next week. So we'll be back to report on like 3 weeks worth of news.
Bye.
Bye.